Just sort of on a quick follow-up note to that, I became a little bit aware of this very recently when I was because I'm part of the immigration committee for TP mobilization and then also part of the subcommittee for Solidarity with Muslims group. But for the larger group, I was looking into what we could do in the schools. And sure enough, the interfaith group that is working very closely with the brave Montgomery County model of CVE, of countering violent extremism, is very much working with a lot of the different programs through the school systems, some of which are phenomenal, about working with different immigrant families and students. But again, the fact that this is sort of creeping in and is now sort of woven into it is very, very concerning. Did you all want to address the second question, which was talking about social situations, if you were hearing anti-Muslim comments?
I just actually wanted to add something to the CVE discussion quickly. One is that increasingly CVE, or countering violent extremism, has been framed in public health terms. And again, focusing on the narrative, it's sort of presented as like this disease, right? This disease that's spreading in the Muslim community. And subsequent to that is that Muslims then have to address it, right? And the government narrative is also that Muslim, or they don't actually specify Muslim communities, but they'll talk about the victims of violent extremism, right? So that Muslims are, for some unknown reason, increasingly and inherently more vulnerable to violent extremism than other communities. So I think it's really important to think about sort of the narrative that's being put forward. Another thing that's important when thinking about countering violent extremism is, as Ramah mentioned earlier, this narrative of good versus bad Muslim, right? So there are, in the Muslim community, there are significant divisions amongst those who support countering violent extremism programs and those who don't. And it's the ones that do that sort of get this label as sort of the good Muslims, right? And there's a particular Muslim organization that has spearheaded and really led the call for Muslim communities to embrace this threat of violent extremism and to address it internally, right? And it's only recently, under the Trump administration, that they somehow figured out that CVE programs target Muslims. Somehow this is a revelation to this particular Muslim organization. But I say that to say that, again, it's a sort of this reiteration and reification of the narrative of good versus bad Muslims. So again, the bad Muslims are those who refuse to accept the premise that violent extremism is a problem within the Muslim community. Now, in terms of social situations, one of our steering committee members works for the Collective Action for Safe Spaces, and she actually does Islamophobia bystander trainings. And I believe actually Kit Bonson is here as well and does bystander trainings. She's standing over there. So I would definitely encourage you all to pursue that route and to really learn about some sort of de-escalation methods and talking with, in particular, the victim of whoever is experiencing an uncomfortable and possibly Islamophobic social situation. So there are strategies through which you can kind of combat it, and recognizing, of course, that in any social situation it often is difficult to intervene, especially when there appears to be sort of an escalation of violence. But so not being my particular expertise, I would definitely defer to Kit and Jessica Raven is her name, from Collective Action for Safe Spaces, to get the bystander intervention trainings.
Just 2 quick points on the CVE. So there's a lot of different CVE programs, some including the State Department. And I think that's, when you look at the international CVE aspect of things, it becomes very clear what the problem is. So internationally, they're like, oh, we have to counter violent extremism of these, like, in these Muslims, and the reason that they're violent extremism is because they're taught, you know, these horrible things growing up that they think is about Islam. And what they fail again to mention is, well, maybe these violent extremists grew up under US bombs, and maybe that might be the issue. And there's actually studies done that say, you know, when people are asked in terms of, like, you know, whether it's extremists or people are asked, like, what is the most concern, what are you seeking out? A lot of people talk about issues of justice, fairness. It's not about, oh, well, I was just taught to hate people. There's like a yearning for justice and fairness that they have not experienced because they are living in either under brutal regimes, plenty of times brutal regimes that are backed by the United States or have faced, you know, horrific war crimes, and U.S. bombings. So again, like these CVE programs want to, especially on an international level, want to take the burden off the United States and be like, well, those Muslims they're just violent. We really have no idea. Why would someone who was bombed, who watched their parents get killed at the young age by a U.S. bomb hate us? I have absolutely no idea. And then just on the domestic level, and Maha was talking about like the divisions among the Muslim community, and we've heard that as a way in terms of telling us, well, I know a Muslim who supports CVE, so like I'm confused about CVE, etc. And really thinking like what that means, like what it means to be in solidarity with Muslims. Number one, let's be very clear, CVE, there's a ton of money being poured into CVE. So if someone is telling you CVE is good, start questioning why they're saying that, and thinking about where the funding and money is coming from. If they are getting money for this, there's a reason they're telling you CVE is good. But also in terms of like, you know, if you sit around and talk to some black people, they might tell you, you know what, the police aren't all bad. Or some Latinx communities might tell you, well, we actually have to work with ICE agents. But we know better than that. We know that like, oh, well, we found someone to tell us that actually the problem is not real, so we're just gonna side with that person. Really rethinking again, like thinking when you're talking about why this is important to do this like allyship trainings and solidarity trainings, that forces you to think about it's not just about, well, I know this one Muslim and I'm in solidarity with this one Muslim. It's talking about the whole community and the issues of the bigger structural issues.
I would add one more thing about Montgomery County's Countering Violent Extremism program is that you will hear that it was started by a local Muslim-led organization, and I think that the same rule applies, is that there's a lot of money that can be made. The woman who headed up the WORD organization, which is the Muslim-led organization, is Dr. Miramati, who now is working for the FBI and has aligned herself with various Islamophobes, including Frank Gaffney, who we were going to protest when he was going to appear in Bethesda. So it's a tangled web, and it is difficult to sort through. I guess that's it.